doing, people? He's alright? How are we? Street Shitter, Len Morley, Stephen, Shane, how's it going? Tina, hello there. Sick. Natalie, how you doing? Very well. Thank you very much. Had to have some, well-earned time away from this whole escapade. So I feel like I want to come back now and chat about a few things, see how it goes, see how I'm feeling. Once I kind of settle back down into this again, it's a bit strange to be back talking to yourself out loud. So I shall be covering a few aspects this evening, but I had to really take some time away. The whole putting yourself out there, YouTube, people in their ways, people slinging shit willy-nilly. It's very difficult, for somebody like myself to accept some of that behaviour. I've never really understood how people think that they can behave something different to what they actually are. When it comes to this YouTube, and I struggle with that a little bit, especially being a man and having pride and having other men speaking in a manner that is belittling, disrespectful, outright slander. It's difficult for me to, sometimes I could laugh, but recently, slanderous comments, people, making all sorts of nonsense up about you, people who you would have thought were real, genuine people in the world, quite open-handedly slinging shit your direction. It annoys me a little bit, because these men are no men. These people are no stand-up people. In my world, you don't behave like that. Especially when I have endeavoured through, the whole past 10 years to walk with logic, reason, basing things in practical reality, supporting my reasoning through practicality. And of course, sometimes you make mistakes, and I have made certain mistakes that I will openly, put my hand up to. But it's quite difficult. I just couldn't be bothered with it anymore, to be honest with you. I'm a person who hopes for progress, and I love to engage in thought-provoking or thought-expanding, conversations. I cannot be arsed with little cult groups of bitches and whiny little men, and people who are just hell-bent on one-upmanship or having ownership over certain things. I cannot be arsed with any of that. My attitude is that I do not own any aspect of this reality. I'm only a man asking questions, making discoveries. I do not have all the answers, and neither does anybody else. There's far too much false ego involved when it comes to truth. A lot of gatekeeping, and people who don't work for any organisations but are gatekeepers in themselves, and who cause frayed communication, and halt progress because they're incapable of being stand-up, genuine, honest people. Lots of jealousy, as I say, ownership. Couldn't be arsed with it. So I thought, do you know what? I'll take a step back and let these people try and own what they think they can own, and see what progress is made. And the little glimpses that I've had, I have seen absolutely no progress whatsoever. Nothing. Zilch. So it tells me a hell of a lot. I had to remove myself from the whole flerf nonsense, because these people in these little groups are, I wish them the best, but they do not offer me any sort of nourishment whatsoever. It's all very well having a little troll and a little laugh, and oh, you're a prick and he's a prick and she's a... Honestly, I have absolutely no want or desire for any of that whatsoever. If people want to have a discussion, if people want to disagree, it's fine. You have to have the ability to speak openly, honestly, rationally. You have to be able to convey yourself articulately, right? It's not that difficult, but it seems to be a real problem in places like YouTube and other social media platforms, because people think that they have a buy to behave whatever way they like. Now, I've never been one of these people who has a certain mannerism in reality and then another mannerism in social media. I don't operate like that. I cannot put on a performance and be somebody that I am not. So I find it very difficult to communicate and progress with that sort of mentality. You know, as I say, I wish these people the best, but your intelligence is very lacking. And these people call themselves truthers, spiritual, Christians, whatever delusion that they want to, convince themselves of. I see right through it. And the fruit of their labours tells you everything you need to know about them. So I hope everybody's well, I hope life's okay. I hope you're not getting dragged too much into the propaganda of the world and, the nonsense that's going on. At the end of the day, no man owns reality. No man created this reality. All there is language and perception, and people are being manipulated through language and perception. So I hope that everybody's well and are not succumbing to the fear mongering that's going on. Don't take life too seriously. Okay? I've been disconnected, so anybody that's tried to contact me, whether it be email or whatever, I do apologise. I had to just take my attention away from it altogether. It's been great, to be honest with you, not having to have any of this stuff in my mind. It's given me time to think about me and my situation and what's coming for the future. So it was a good break to have. Who do we have? Simon, Sean, Tina, Ray, Neil, Paul, Renewed Awareness, how you doing? Stephen Walsh, Angela, hello there. Check out my gardens. Yes, spend plenty of time in the garden, Angela. It's the best thing for you. Tina H, YouTube full of trolls and shells, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of paranoia in that regard, that people have these emotional reactions and they automatically start calling people shills and this, that and the other. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a huge aspect of organisation going on, but there's a lot of just normal people, day to day, Joe Blogs, and you've seen these behaviours in all other situations. People behave like that. Again, it always comes down to your reasoning. What's your logic? What's your reasoning? I'm a person who always tries to find the root of things. I don't just emotionally, impulsively jump to something. I want to get to the root of any issue. And that's always been my process, to continue asking questions to see where I end up. And if I keep asking questions of something and I cannot break that, or I cannot find an inconsistency or a contradiction or whatever it may be, then chances are you've uncovered actual truth. So there's far too much of this. I mean, you've seen it, that's one of the reasons I left. It quickly descended into a constant versus acceleration type dichotomy. Now, I'll hold my hands up in that regard, that I did not ever intend for that to happen, because the main focus should have always been that the globe earth claim was a physical downwards acceleration. Now that's what I uncovered, and through my own stupidity I started to ponder the possibilities of what that speed, that motion could actually be, and I had various conceptual ideas in my mind, okay? And I have to work through those and ask questions. I don't want to leave any assumption unturned, in regards to things like inertia, the cause of inertia. Do we ever get matter truly stationary to see what would happen and what the effects would be under certain conditions of constant versus acceleration? These were thoughts, and again, I premised every single one of these with, I do not know the speed, the true motion of the Earth. All I know is that the vector is in that direction, and that's demonstrable and that's provable to every single person alive. The rest of it is inconsequential to that fact. There's so many variables that are unaccounted for. There's so many assumptions still there. Again, aspects of acceleration, at no point did I ever disagree that use of acceleration could create certain vectors and certain effects. You can go back and check the work that was there, but people seem to miss these points, and they get confused and lost because I am not constantly reminding people that I am working through my own thoughts, my own conceptual notions of what may be happening that are full of questions, and still I have questions. So, the main point was that the globe Earth was the claim. There was a claim of downwards acceleration. There was a claim from both globe Earth and flat Earth that there was a physical downwards acceleration. Now I asked questions of that and set out to see if that was actually the case, and discovered that there is no signs of any downward acceleration whatsoever. So people jumped on that. I let myself get dragged into a bit of a dichotomy, and the focus was lost. So the focus has to be brought back immediately to the fact that there is no physical downwards acceleration, and that the vector's demonstrably upwards. What that speed and the truth, the every aspect of that motion actually is something that can be discovered, maybe. But again, it's inconsequential and irrelevant to where we are right now. That being the discovery and the knowledge of the fact that there is no physical downwards acceleration and the vector is demonstrably upwards. What we call buoyancy, density, pressure gradients, yada yada, is all a result of the Earth's motion. Nobody knows what's putting the Earth in motion. Nobody knows the true trajectory of the Earth's motion, whether it be some sort of rotation, whether it be linear. Nobody actually knows any of that stuff. I get too excited and carried away with myself, and held on a little bit to the concept or the notion of a constant with some sort of ether or drag, and wanted to work through that. Okay, now that may have created some sort of dichotomy, which was never the intended result. Okay, so again, I have to pull it back to the facts, and that's where I want the discussion to remain. Okay, so anybody that wants to engage with me in that regard, fine, albeit let's have it, but there has to be an open line of communication. I don't have anything to defend other than what the practical shows. The tests are totally conclusive. There is it's beyond any shadow of a doubt that what we call buoyancy is a result of the Earth's push. Okay? Now anybody that wants to go contrary to that, their reasoning is going to be fraught with nonsense. And this is where a lot of people are trying to run away from. It always comes down to reasoning. I've seen, I think it was Nick earlier talking about bulverism, this term, okay? Bulverism, a logical fallacy where an argument is dismissed or considered invalid not because of its own merits or flaws, but attacking the speaker's motives, character or presumed biases. It essentially shifts the focus from the argument itself to the arguer, right? So it's just another form of atom, right? But also in that, it's a way for people to avoid their own reasoning, right? So when we talk to these people and they go on about downwards acceleration, what is their reasoning behind that? This is the components of their beliefs that they really want to run away from, because deep down inside they know they're being dishonest, okay? Because they have no reasoning. There is no force known to man that's capable of this type of acceleration that these people want to believe in. It's a total insult to anybody's intelligence for somebody to claim that there's something without any of the signs or measures of said claim, like uniform downwards acceleration of solid, liquid and gas simultaneously. Okay? That's a fallacy in their reasoning. It's rooted in their belief system. A blind belief based on some emotional attachment to a mantric statement that they want to defend. So that the whole power of it gets lost when these things are not focused in on. Okay? Because it's very, very simple. And it's again, these people are still doing the same thing. You know, Earth stationary. Well, in the situation of free fall, you must have a belief that matter can be accelerated all at the same rate, so that no signs of acceleration occur. Again, it's an absurd claim to be having. Acceleration with no signs of acceleration. And it's that simple. And this is the kind of blind, wall that's put up from these people that's just a fruitless endeavour. I don't even know why they still come and hear. I've taken this time away, and they're still really triggered by their own idiotic beliefs, that they feel the need to come and try and impose their idiotic nonsense onto me. I have been away now for nearly 3 months. I have given them no attention whatsoever. I'm not interested in them. I do not go to their chat boxes. I engage with them with nothing, because they have no reasoning. Okay? They are being dishonest with themselves. And if you're being dishonest with yourself, there's no progress that you can have. So, you can believe it if you want. As I say, it's up to you. But it's very telling to those who comprehend your own reasoning. It's like a little child trying to convince me they never ate the chocolate cake while their hand's in the chocolate cake. It's akin to that sort of reasoning. It's very childlike. I don't want to insult children, It's just dishonest. So, I qualify my reasoning. When force is applied to different states of matter, we see the resulting effects. And again, these are the sort of people who say things like, gas pressure requires containment, which is something that they learned from me a long time ago. But again, it's not about ownership, right? But the process of that reasoning is, as practical people, we understand and comprehend that in order for pressure to be maintained, there has to be a containment, right? So it's the very same reasoning that if I say, well, in order for a force to be present, we must see signs of displacement between various states of matter, because that's what we witness. Then I go to free fall, where there's a claim of downwards acceleration, and I see no signs of said acceleration. I can qualify my reasoning by the practical process, the very same practical process that these people utilise when they say gas pressure requires containment. Therefore asserting that because we live in gas pressure, we live in some sort of containment. They want to pick and choose their reasoning processes when it suits them. But yet when they hear something that they don't like, which is very questionable, especially when I point out to them the process of their own reasoning and how there's a side-by-side comparison where they neglect one and accept the other. It's the very same process. If somebody claims a force is present or a force is acting on various states of matter, we witness signs of that. That being with gas and liquid particularly, we will see a displacement of those. And when the force is applied, air and liquids will correlate to the direction of the system. So air will always be towards the direction of the force, and the more dense material towards the root of the source. That's 100% of the time, no questions. Okay? So then we come to free fall. And these very same people now want to assert that there's an acceleration with no signs of acceleration. And they make idiotic statements like that the whole system is accelerating at the same rate, which is ridiculous. A force would have to apply itself varyingly, that being one force applying different amounts of force. So a certain amount of force to air A little bit more force to water and more force to solid in order to uniformly accelerate them all simultaneously. No human being has ever witnessed such a force and never will, because they don't exist. So then you have people that come here and still assert that the Earth's a stationary plane. Where we witness a buoyant effect. A buoyant effect is the result of a force directionality. We can recreate that in any vector. But the direction the force goes in creates a buoyant effect in that direction. Then when we release it into free fall, that being disconnected from the Earth solidly, we see a ceasing immediately of that buoyant effect. Once again it's connected to the Earth, the buoyant effect takes hold yet again. So you can play with those variables and you can witness it for yourself in real time, the effects of the push of the Earth. There is no sound reasoning backed by any form of practicality that can show you that buoyancy goes against the force direction, or that a force direction can create a simultaneous acceleration of various states of matter. It's totally and utterly absurd, backed by nothing other than wishful thinking, beliefs. Okay, so this is when you see that these people who are invested in cult type mentality have a commonality with other cults, that being globe earth and flat earth. Now the power again, and I've repeated this and I know many of you probably have heard this, okay? The very root of the globe earth, its fundamental requirement, the foundational building block for a globe earth to even exist conceptually, is what we call gravity. Gravity is an inwards acceleration towards a central point. A claim and a belief that's presupposed from a presuppositional model. That being, we want to start with a globe earth and we need to make reality fit. It's a massive, massive red flag. And anybody with any sensibility should be able to see through that, particularly when it's articulated to you and pointed out to you. There is no grounds whatsoever. So in that one case of a free fall test, the whole globe earth paradigm falls apart. It's founded upon a house of cards. I'm going to make a smoke. I've gave up weed also. But I'm still on the tobacco, you know. Again, this is the characters of these people that, you know, I just can't comprehend, you know, how adults confessing and professing to be based in truth and logic and reason, you know, still can maintain these faulty beliefs. It's astounding to me, absolutely astounding. So there is no point in asking me anything about flareism or globe earthism, because I pay absolutely no attention to them whatsoever. A lot of these people have stabbed me in the back and, you know, been very dismissive based on their own ineptitude, their own lack of ability to reason with clarity. And I see them for what they are. You know, it's a sad state, and it was disheartening to me because I did have hope for many years that we would reach some sort of clarity. But what I've witnessed is a lot of attitudes of ownership. There's many people who you might not really suspect who have an inner desire to be a somebody, to be top of the pile, to be leader of flairfism or leader of globearthism or whatever, you know, I'm not interested in any of that sort of mindset. It's a low level of intelligence as far as I'm concerned. You know, when I see that sort of behaviour. So you can think that you own whatever aspect of this reality you like. You're only deluding yourself. You're not going to convince me, and it's not going to affect me because, you know, I don't feel any need to fight. So if you want to own flairfism, if you want to own upward, you know, motion, carry on. But I see you, and you're not going to progress anything. It's been 3 months, and the only person I've seen endeavouring to progress it anywhere is level-headed William and Natalie. That's it. The rest of them are just stuck in their little countercultures, their little echo chambers, professing and patting each other in the back for how woke and how they were the first and they were the best and they were that. You know, these people forget I've walked this path before any of them for over 10 years. None of them were there. So there's some sort of infection going on where narcissists have came to the forefront and desperately want to have some sort of leadership or ownership so that they can you know, present themselves as some sort of superior. Best of luck to them. I'm not judging them. I'm just explaining that I see through it, and it does not float my boat in any way, shape or form. And for men that want to act the Billy Big Bollocks and run about slandering my name and misrepresenting me, you know, at the end of the day, you're nothing but a little simp male who would never dream of engaging with me in reality at that sort of level. You know it and I know it. So you can kid yourself on all you like, hiding behind your computer screen. You're what you are. Gave it up 8 months ago too. I'm on little, you know, real capsules, real oil capsules. I know somebody that processes it and puts it into real oil form, so it's like a little pin drip in a capsule. And I've been taking one of those in the evening, just purely for health benefits and, you know, to take the little edge. My mind's quite an active thing, you know, sometimes I struggle to shut off in the evening. But I realised the negative effect that the weed was having on me, and I don't know if it's because, you know, I didn't have a proper access to some clean homegrown. I think a lot of the stuff you buy on the streets quite dirty. Don't know if there's chemicals in it or whatever. But I done a little experiment a couple of weeks ago where I thought I'll roll a little joint, and as soon as I had that little joint, I just kept having the flood of negative emotions and negative thoughts. And again, it's one of these difficult things that when you've been doing it for so long, you don't really see those effects until you take a break from it. Again, I'm not passing judgment. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, people shouldn't smoke weed. For a long period of my life, it was a necessity, and it had a real beneficial role in my life. But in recent times, the way my attention and my focus has been going, I had to let it go. So you know, you see where it's been up to, especially the next day with the kind of lingering, you know, hangover where you think that, you know, you've slept the stone off, when in reality it's still slightly lingering. So as RJC infuriating the YouTube hardmen, because I'm a man of pride and principle, and, you know, to have these little simp males trying to belittle you, and bitching in comment sections. It's quite infuriating because it's a really disrespectful act that in reality would never happen, or it maybe will happen, but there's confrontation would come of that, where they would be held accountable. Whereas a lot of people on here seem to have the belief that they're not accountable. And it's very easy for them just to view you as an object. Again, I'm just a family man that lives in a housing scheme in Scotland. People can come here and witness it for themselves, but they have these fantasy notions that you're somehow some paid shill and working for the Illuminati and the Freemasons and this, that and the other. I mean, these people are just pure fantasists. And their fantasy, their delusions are causing conflict and very insulting. And a man that has principle and pride in that regard, it can become quite infuriating. So I had to remove my attention, and put things back in perspective. Of course you cats, how you doing? I've not seen you for a long time. Aye, Daniel, it was, as I say, when you're in it, I'd been smoking it every day for the last fucking 20 years. It helped me through my deep dark depression for a decade. It helped me to cope. It was very useful for that. But it becomes a habitual thing, and you don't really realise the mindset it's keeping you in. I've gained a lot more clarity now, a lot more focus since I gave it up, which has been fruitful for me. I needed it. But again, it's horses for courses. People use it for all manner of different reasons and for their own psychology, their own emotions, whatever it may be. I'm not saying any of this as a general thing that I'm putting out there that's an opinion for all. I'm only telling you my experience. I remember back in the day, even in my depressive years, when I was heavy invested in playing the guitar, I used to be able to smoke solid, the old soap bar, and have a real focus. I could really harness my focus in and sit for hours and maintain that sort of focus. And then, old soap bar died out and weed came to the forefront. And in recent times I found myself, smoking a joint, picking the guitar up, and within half an hour to an hour my focus is just totally gone. And just putting it down and just sitting here in a kind of veg state, staring at nothing. Or having 49 fucking YouTube pages open with the intention of fucking watching them. Shit like that. So my plans now going forward is that I'm going to get back out into the street. I'm going to get back to the universities and try and push this discussion, because at the end of the day, this is no opinion based. This is no fanciful beliefs. This is real world physics that we're talking about now, and people out there have a right to have these things scrutinised and put their attention on it. At the end of the day, there's what we call an education system. Maintaining these sort of beliefs in people and blinding people. So I want to go out there again and try and push that conversation. Again, it's not going to happen on YouTube. YouTube's compartmentalised now into little cult groups of counterculture, where people are deluding themselves into thinking that they're the wokest of the woke. It's quite a mental illness. increase the THC levels so we get 2 stones from a little smoke. Yeah, Simon, I seen that. You know, my test that I done, it was like hardly anything, like really hardly anything in a little joint, and fuck me, you know, it was quite frightening the power that it had, you know. The guitar there been off it for a week now for the exact same reason. I know, I'm the boss. I don't know if Des Sherwood's here or listening. I was in a bad place, Des, and you know I was supposed to catch up with you, and you know I'm feeling good now, and hopefully you're still about. We can get back to it. You know, I want to try and progress in that regard. So I don't know if he's here or he might watch this at a later time, but. So what's been happening? I take it it's still the dichotomy rolls on. Yeah. As I say, the last time, you know, I remember was the dichotomy was playing itself out. You know, the whole, as I had warned people for years, don't adopt any of these models. And people come at me talking about the motion aspect as some sort of model or model building. It's no, it's an aspect of the whole, just the same as water's level, or this is the geometry we use, this is how constructions, this is what blueprints, you know, they're all aspects of the reality. Just because you discover an aspect of the whole does not mean that it's a model building of the whole, you know. It's, you know, the motion is an aspect, not a model. But, you know, people try to drag it into some sort of model argument when it's just not the case. Again, this all culminates from me from asking questions of claims, that being downwards acceleration or the flareism, that buoyancy and density is the cause of what we call up and down and yada yada. So you ask questions of that, you make realisation, you make discoveries. It's not a model. When you conceptualise, as I done, and I hold my hands up and take responsibility for that, I should never have aired it in public, that what my contemplations were. You know, I should have kept that to myself until I had worked through them properly. You know, so it's certainly not a model. It's an aspect. Fuck knows what's going on with the weather. Here in the west of Scotland, it has been glorious for the last 2 weeks and seems to be the case for the next 2 weeks coming, which makes me worry as to what sort of punishment is to follow. Now, I don't know if you've been keeping up, but they openly admitted a plan to actively dim the sun in the UK. So I don't know if this is going to be utilised as, see, look, it's so dry, the sun's causing chaos, we must dim the sun. And that's why we're getting this good weather. Fuck knows. I'm very suspicious of what's going on. But I'm not going to complain. You know, it's been absolutely fucking brilliant. This is the way spring used to be when I was a child. This was spring. Just normal spring. Wasn't it climate change, global dewarming, any fucking nonsense. It was just, this is spring, this is normal weather. And then as we progressed into summer, it got warmer, and it lasted to the end of August. People had sprinklers, you know, water in their gardens. It was glorious. So this is almost like they're trying to, you know, defame the normal. Right? Like this is some sort of anomaly, because the generations that have been born into this is an anomaly to them, but there's generations of us who lived this normal. So it's like they're trying to flip the script, that this weather's anomalous. It's no anomalous, it's fucking normal. It's the way it should be. So we'll see what their little devious plans are in the future. I know they make it out, 50 million, you know, for this dimming this. They've been doing it for fucking years. Years. Any cretin with an ounce of awareness could witness it. Angela wants to decorate the studio. I'm going to actually decorate this. It's needing an overhaul. Gaz Bob, you've not seen many trails there. Clear blue skies. I felt the same as you, that they are messing with us. I'm always waiting for the punishment. Waiting for the punishment. Same for you, Daniel. But I seen, was it, what do you call her, Katie Hopkins had a little short video up a few days ago of, you know, a grid-like trail. So even people like that are, you know, asking questions of what that actually is. And also, she's of a generation making the statement that that was never there as a child. No, Paul, I've been off of it. My attention's been totally removed, to be honest with you. I'm just easing myself back in. I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself, you know. I can only walk my path. It's up to each one of you to find ways of communication. You know, I will do my best to offer up what I can, but people need to walk their own path. And that's my attitude. You know, I'm not here to save the world. I'm not here to be a messiah and wake the world up. You know, I don't think that's possible. I can only take one step at a time and enjoy my endeavours, and as long as I'm enjoying my endeavours, that's what's important. And when it becomes work or it becomes a task, my relationship with it has to change. I'm doing it for the wrong reason, you know. So I'm just going to take it a little bit at a time and just enjoy what I'm doing without any pressure. Hi Simon, this is the thing, isn't it? What are they up to? You've seen the grids, Tina. Yes guys, I've been away in Europe a couple of times in the van. It's been wonderful. That was another thing that put things in perspective for me. You know, there's a lot to be said for living life on the edge like that. You know, that sort of nomadic lifestyle, and I can see why there's a massive push to try and curtail it, because it is liberating. It's very freeing when you're unshackled by familiarity and habitual patterns and behaviours, you know, and you actually take the step, and it can be unsettling and it can be quite scary. I'm not going to lie to you, but once you take that step, it becomes very addictive. And then you come back to normality, and there's just this deep sense of yearning to continue that journey of travelling and, you know, being in places where nobody knows you, you know, unfamiliar surroundings, breaking habits. It's absolutely fucking brilliant. So, you know, for the future, that's where my focus is. I want more of that sort of experience, and I encourage you lot to give it a bash if you ever can. You know, don't do what I done for years and waste your time making it too big. Oh, I need a motorhome and I need this, and I just bought an older van, you know, beds in it. You just take camping gear, you know, cooking equipment with you, you know, you'll be fine. Just take the step. It's fucking brilliant. Come to Canada. Well, hopefully one day I can. Angela, hopefully one day. Hello, Andrew. Still American Spirit, maker marks. Have they still been spraying where you are, Phil? Is that Phil in Blackpool?
There you go.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. Do you need a smoke?
No, I'm okay. I've still got a bit there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of places seeming to be trying to clamp down on it. It seems like part of the shift in the consciousness of people, there seems to be a massive, amount of people now opting for like van life and travel, and as I said before, it seems like the whole game of society and city is to keep you locked, to try and restrict that sort of free movement in any way, shape or form. I think that's a lot of the agenda of this, illegal immigrant type thing. People don't realise that they're demanding, border again, and you have to be very careful again. There's loads of complex issues in that regard. I'm just going to skirt over it, but one of the outcomes very well may be, that people are actually demanding stricter border, and all sorts of documentation to travel, red tape in your way, and you have to be careful of that, because for me, I thought that at the heart of the human being, we wanted to be inclusive, that we wanted freedom of movement, no borders, the ability to mingle and mix wherever we want. But the propaganda, employs little factions of any religious faction or national, faction to create terror situations, and it's blown out of proportion that all these people are criminals, and all of these people are bad, and we need to this, that and the other. Well, as I say, I have to be very careful, and I think loads of other people should be, because if it is at the root of the human nature to want to freely travel and mix and mingle, be careful for what you're asking for, because if our borders locked down and then other borders locked down, where's that going to leave you? Restricted yet again. And now I'm seeing in various countries now they're putting restrictions and bans on motorhomes and camper vans, because they seem to be cottoning on to what's happening. They don't want the human spirit freed and moving freely and travelling and getting to know each other and people speaking directly to each other. Remember, the propaganda would make you believe that you've got the enemies that are in mass. The vast 95% of people, regardless of what culture and what religious background they have, are just people like you and I. They just want peace and love and freedom. That's all they really want. But the majority of people are now being convinced by a minority. Oh fuck, I forgot about the boxing. It's Kakachi against Lee Wood, isn't it? Am I missing the undercard? Who said that to me there? Thomas. What fight am I missing right now? I totally forgot that was on. Aye. And that's it, cities, when they talk about overpopulation, they're talking about their control grid. The network's control grid is cities and towns, right? Now these are little tiny specks, right? And fair enough, maybe they are overpopulated, but see, when you actually travel the land between these little specks of what we call cities and towns, 99% of the area between these is fucking empty. There is no overpopulation, only in their control networks. Their farms, their little pig farms that they call cities and towns. Right? When you actually travel between them on the land, you know, like going through France, 800 miles, 95% of that was empty space. So don't believe in overpopulation. It's a lot of utter shit. Absolute fucking nonsense. It's like the farmer saying, I've got too many sheep, I'm overpopulated. Oh no. JC, how you doing, mate? Aye, people demanding the walls that will keep them in when they don't even realise that's what's happening to them. You know? Because they're too full of egotistical patriotism and nonsense. Again, it's these opportunists that are the perpetrators of this. You know, the propagandists put the story out, and the narcissists, the sociopaths, the opportunists amongst us step up and start trying to goad the rest of us into the dirt when they don't even realise what they're asking for. Congo v Cooper. Fuck it, I'll catch the replay it later. Totally forgot. Again, it's because it's no given the same sort of fucking publicity as some of the other fights, you know. That's why it slipped my mind. Taxing the rich again. See, for me, that's the real issue. There's a disproportionate, you know, distribution of wealth. Okay, it's like a game of Monopoly. Now, anybody that's played Monopoly knows what happens at the end of a game of Monopoly. Somebody holds all the cards. So, you know, for these elites, these super rich who hold all that wealth, nobody's focusing on that being the root of the problem, that there's a mass, you know, imbalance in the distribution of wealth. They're all arguing about race, religion, sexuality, anything to take the attention and the focus away from the very fact that there's a mass disproportioned, you know, distribution of wealth, which would alleviate lots of suffering and solve many problems. But they want to convince you that you have to hate on the coloured person, or the one wearing the turban, or the one that's a Catholic, or the one that's a Jew, or the one that's a Muslim. As long as your attention's there. Now again, remember, the vast majority of these people are just common people like you and I. They're not interested in that shite. It was becoming apparent that there was a mass imbalance in the distribution of wealth, and all of a sudden people became distracted by that. So if somebody's advocating for putting the focus back onto these people that are holding all the wealth, now I wouldn't say they're a shill, I would say that there's somebody that comprehends what the real issue is. It's the ones that are telling you to hate the Muslim, or hate the Jew, or hate this, or hate that. That's the shills, that's the fucking propaganda machine rolling on. That's just the way I see it. Exactly, JC. Exactly. See, the distribution of wealth, the main issue. The other issue is, you know, governments and politicians willy-nilly implementing, you know, policies and legislations, and, you know, to suit their invested interests, and, you know, all that sort of corruption. All that's been forgotten about because, you know, some guy wants to be a woman. Could not give a fuck. Again, it comes right back to what I talked about for years, subjective and objective. What are the objective issues? Why are we having to deal with policy issues or, arguments that are surrounded in, subjectivity? Subjectivity should never be public domain or pushed as any sort of relevance. Objectively, us as human beings have certain requirements. And for me, a government was set up to fulfil and maintain those objective requirements. Somewhere along the line, totalitarian tiptoe, it slowly moved from the being objective into all this subjective nonsense. Again, I'm not interested in your religion, your sexuality, or any of that stuff, any of your ideologies. Could not give a fuck. Keep it to your own private affairs. And that's it. If you want to believe in nonsense and practice your nonsense in your own privacy, that's nobody's business. When it comes to matters of objectivity, like maintaining infrastructures, the basic necessities of living for each and every human being, that's objective. It was set up as an objective game in the first place. And as usual, it becomes corrupted. Till now at this point, where the whole focus is totally lost. And people have placed relevance on arguing about subjective ideology and conceptual nonsense. It's fucking so boringly obvious, which is why I have to remove my attention, because I just cannot be fucking arsed with it. None of them are making any significant difference whatsoever. None of them. Exactly, Jesse, that's what we're talking about. Why do we have any homelessness or any of that stuff when there's the wealth is being maintained and held by a fraction, a 1% of the populace? That's what people are losing sight of. It's like me winning in Monopoly and then manipulating the other players to start turning on each other so that, the focus is away from me and I can keep my wealth in the game. Religion is a private affair. It should never be there to influence, Again, even, it was set up even in law, it was a religious influence because, again, I've had that discussion. You cannot plead any sort of objective morality unless you've got a narrative that transcends human beings. So, in that regard, religion has to play some sort of role. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, it's just the facts, that's the way it happened. Because how are you going to impose any sort of ethic or moral without some sort of thread to an authority that transcends us as human beings? If you don't, then it's just, law can just be changed willy-nilly, depending on who's in control. Morals can be altered and twisted depending on who gets, in the position of authority. Hi Imran, can I borrow a fuck to give because the media wants me to believe there's a war going on between India and Pakistan, right? See what I mean? It's just that, everywhere. how is it even feasible in these places where the poverty is so vast? You know, but yet, you know, oh, we'll set up space programs and make cartoons and take all this money for the space program while there's fucking women, children, men starving in the fucking streets, living in dire squalor, you know, and now it's all, let's have a war, let's waste, you know, resources and attention and life on utter fucking nonsense. Just stick to fucking battling each other at cricket, you cunts, you know, and distribute the wealth. Again, it just shows you the types of minds that we have in fucking control here. Infantile, fucking narcissistic, sociopathic dipshittery. That their intelligence is fucking so low. The tools that they use are so fucking boring, which just tells you how much of the spell the vast majority of the populace is under. Because the tools that they use are not that sophisticated. Exactly, I'm the boss. Listen, I even have my own issues with society as a whole and the whole notion of society, because as soon as you, that's for me, you know, I like the sort of nomadic idea, because as you say, you know, as soon as you start a society, it's like, how are you going to please everybody? It's an absurd notion as far as I'm concerned. Unless, you know, they're formulated by choice through practical experience, and you make your own choices about what society and what kind of people are going to be in your living quarters, and you know, you have an agreement on the functionality and the responsibilities and the participation. But that's not what we're born into, you know. It's thrust upon you. You're born into this captive state, and you just have to deal with the dysfunctionality. You know, as I say, I have my reservations about whether it's even a good idea in the first place, whether even settlement's a good idea in the first place. You know. Exactly. Well, Shane Banshee, I would agree. I would agree, because this is all conceptual. This, what we call civilised societal living, it's a concept, it's an idea. It does not offer the truth. The truth of this reality is we do not know why we exist. We do not even know where we are. Nobody has any right to tell any of us who we are, why we're here, what we should be, how we should live. So it's a man-made idea that everybody's shoehorned into when they're born. And as you say, it doesn't matter if they're born into extreme wealth or extreme poverty, the effects of that idea has implications on any human being. Because the real truth is nobody actually knows what we should and shouldn't be doing, and how we should live, or any of that stuff. One massive cult indeed. I think we have to be very careful about ideology and concepts of living. You know, these notions of who we are and what life's about and why we live and blah blah blah. we've been taken so far from any sort of natural form of living based on these things that we call a society and civilised living. I mean, you know, it's anything but civilised, really. Which is why I can advocate for a type of anarchy, and I don't mean like, you know, immorality. You know, I always had a sense of right and wrong as a child. You know, whether that's just my subjectivity, we can talk about that, but I think the vast majority of people have that. I've always had a problem with the notion of settlement and farming and these sorts of ideas, because they're very restricting, they shackle you, you know. There's abundance in this realm, you know, particularly between the bands of the tropics, and there's freedom to roam for every single human being alive right now. But there seems to be a manipulation somewhere along the line, and settlement was introduced in these sorts of ideas, you know. Settlement for me probably started when somebody had the idea to capture people and keep them as slaves or fucking whatever, and it grew from there. I mean, it's all very well having a base that you can operate from, but you should still have the freedom and the ability to roam and move however you see fit. I mean, does it not just come down to common sensibilities? Don't impose yourself on anybody else's free will, you know? But people have been convinced that they're too dumb for that, and the majority right now probably are too dumb for that, because it's so simple. But they're too wrapped up in their own delusions of grandeur. You know, people call it main character syndrome, and that's what you're seeing more and more these days. Everybody thinks they're the fucking god of the realm, and that everybody should kowtow to what they think and believe. People have lost any sort of self-respect and respect for others and common decency. It's just all eroded. Aye, will she? Aye, if you create a hierarchical structure, Leroy, that's always going to happen. These sorts of minds will utilise that. That's the opportunists. Which again is, you know, where when I talk about anarchy, I'm not talking about lawlessness. I'm talking about, you know, the true meaning of it, not the propagandised meaning of it. You know, there can be a natural hierarchy of elders where people who have lived and have experience and freely share their knowledge and their experience of what they've gathered. And then there's like a false hierarchy of, you know, that sort of corruption of power and misuse of position. And this system and the way it is and it's been designed offers that to the opportunist, you know. Millions will laugh at their expense. Well, seems to be the case. It's been good to catch up. As I say, break the ice, get myself back to this. The longer you leave it, the harder it is to come back to it, you know. But it's nice that people offer me up content to keep my attention on. I like that aspect of it, where it's free flowing, where I don't have to have anything that I specifically want to talk about. A lot of you people bring some decent content and good talking points that I can only offer up. Again, I don't have the answers, and I'm not professing that I'm right in anything that I say. I can only offer up what I think and my reasons for which. And if there's a flaw in there, then fine, we're all here to learn. You know, I say I'm not a deluded person that thinks I've got the answers to everything. You know, I like to logically play with things and invert and see where I can go. You know. My wee capsule's kicking in, so I'm getting a wee bit kind of woohoo. Well, cheers, Scott. That's all we can do, isn't it? It's trying to always remain as objective as you possibly can be, but as I said, you know, it's very difficult in communication. That's why I put, you know, that in the title, Semantical Disconnection, because people either don't hear or deliberately don't hear, you know, that you can only offer up your thoughts and your processes of your reasoning. You know, I'm never really offering anything certain unless it's, you know, something real world, practical, objective. And we're talking about these sorts of things. You can only convey your thought stream that you formulate through your own lived experience and share that out there, you know. Aye, I think so too, Levi. Cheers, GT. It's nice that that's acknowledged and seen. Yeah, they're on their high horses, Andrew. We'll leave them to it. You know, again, a lot of these people go to chats or want to come here. I have no interest in them. You know, it's these people are triggered by their own insecurities. So for me, it's just best to kind of shrug it off, wish them the best. See, I don't hate anybody. I don't wish anybody any ill will. We can only communicate, and if there's a break in communication, usually it's because somebody's not taking responsibility. You know, and again, I've made mistakes and I take my responsibility. It's fine. You know, nothing bad happens to you. Again, the people that delude themselves into convincing themselves that they're some sort of messiah or superior intellect are the ones that fray communications, because it's very difficult, you know, other aspects getting away, and it causes frustration and a break in communication when these sorts of characters get involved. So, you know, when you see these sort of characters, it's best just to remove your attention. It's pretty much a waste of time. They've got their own mental issues and emotional retardation that they have to deal with, you know. But there's far too much of us against them mentality, and I'm sick and tired of that. You know, people that are creating these dichotomies and creating these opposing camps, they're mentally ill. That's the reality. They are mentally ill. You know, for me, we're trying to achieve open lines of communication with nothing to hide, and a rigorous process of understanding reasoning and holding things to account. And that's it. That's always been the way for me. Cheers, Walshy and Banshee. Exactly, Angela. That's it. And the enemy of that, you know, is identified in the methods of communication. You can see the fruits of people if you understand the use of language, you know, and the use of logic and rationale. You can see the opposition to that we all yearn for. as I say, it's easy to get drawn in and become a part of the us against them, especially when you're being attacked and you feel under pressure, you know. So you just got to revise yourself, and with age and experience you get to revise yourself a little bit better, and you know, you can rein it back and you can come back again. You know, just because you make a mistake, it doesn't mean to say you're inflicted with that mistake for the rest of your life. People need to grow, people make mistakes and you grow, and we have to encourage each other and support each other in that regard, you know. But when people are being dogmatic and being deliberately obtuse and you know, setting up deliberate opposition to you, then you know, you have to realise that there's no line of communication there, and the best thing for your mental health and your emotional stability is to just remove your attention and disengage it. If they don't have the intellectual capacity and the emotional maturity to engage in any sort of rational, you know, even if it's a conflict, you know, it's a conflict always comes down to one party not taking responsibility for a wrong. And if you understand the processes of the mind and language, then you can uncover that in any situation, in any scenario. We have these gifts there. You just have to pick the tools up and start utilising them. No, Realm Walker, you certainly can't. Adam, how you doing, mate? Hope you're well. Aye. I don't want no supplements, Scott Walker, I just want the actual sun. As I say, this that we've been receiving recently is the true normal. And don't let them convince you otherwise. I don't know how many you're of my generations or older, but you know it and I know it, that this is normality. What we've had for the last 10 or 15 years has been the abnormal. You know, incessant fucking uniform blanketed sky, sunblock, you know. No, exactly, Walshy. Nobody can. We're all in it together, whether they like it or not. And nobody's above anybody. And anybody professing that they're above anybody, they should be brought back down. I'm sick and tired of fucking sycophantic behaviour to celebrities and idols and gurus and messiahs. It's cringy. Really, like a sore cringe that people have not learned. Yeah. Yep, Euclid's bendy water. I used to get to the end of summer and be yearning for the cool, crispy, cold air again. Go on a walk and breathing in the crispy, cold air because I'd had my fill of summer. You know, where I would embrace the winter again and enjoy it for what it was. But we've just not had that in the last 20-25 years. Anyhow, I think I shall leave it there. Maybe next time, if anybody's interested, you can come and we can have a chat about whatever you like, you know. But again, I'm warning people right now, I ain't interested in any dichotomies. I'm not interested in this camp against that camp. I am not part of this versus that. Okay? People telling you, you know, the upward motions, it's constant versus accelerating, they're misrepresenting. It's total bullshit. The facts are the facts. Anyhow, take it easy everybody, and I will catch you very, very soon. As I say, get in touch. You get anything you want to talk about, you know, let me know and I'll get back to you. Take care of yourselves.